We are going to talk a little bit today, a little bit more about this investigation into the police officer's apartment at Brickenwood. It was a week ago today that someone opened fire on a police officer's apartment at Brickenwood at about, in the wee hours of the morning anyway, somewhere about 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the morning. And we have been attempting to piece together this story bit by bit over the course of the last week. And certainly two things have been at the forefront of my concern about all of this. And the first is that the public was never notified about this. If we had not broken the story on Friday afternoon through back channels, probably we still would know about it today. And the administration yesterday, the mayor was on the program defending his decision or supporting the chief's decision, Chief Joseph Cordeiro's decision, not to release information on this story and not to tell the public about it, saying that by doing so it could have hampered the investigation. I thoroughly disagree, and we're going to get into that. Actually wrote something on the WBSM webpage today, WBSM.com, and all of our social media, and comes to you on our free WBSM app as well. But in any event, we'll get more into that in just a couple of moments. But when we finally were able to have access to our leaders this week, the police chief on Tuesday, and then the mayor yesterday, the police chief, when I addressed one of my primary concerns, and that is that police officers tell us that they went out on shift on Thursday of last week after the shooting, and were never notified that a shooting had occurred, and we're concerned that they may have been targets of this madman with a gun. They went to work. They, suited up, got in their vehicles, went out and patrolled the streets all day. And it wasn't until late in the afternoon that many of them found out, some 7, 8, 9, even more than that, hours later for some police officers. Well, the chief assured us on Wednesday's broadcast, or was he on Tuesday's broadcast of this week, that the officers had in fact been informed. As a matter of fact, the chief said that a BOLO had been issued. Now, you know what a BOLO is, right? A BOLO is attention all cars, be on the lookout for a black Chevy with a license plate, blah, 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 wanted in connection with a shooting at Brickenwood Project early this morning. Be careful, the suspect may be armed and dangerous, okay? That's a BOLO, right? Attention all cars goes out on the radio. After the BOLO is issued locally, and all of the local cops are notified, then the BOLO goes countywide. And it goes out to all of the police officers within the region, Acushnet, Fairhaven, Dartmouth, Westport, everybody in the area gets that BOLO. And so that they know to be looking for an armed guy who just shot at a police officer's house. That's what a BOLO is. So the chief told us that a BOLO went out. When I asked him about these officers being on the street all day without having any knowledge of this, the chief said, oh, no, everybody was notified. We put a BOLO out. When I asked the mayor about that yesterday, the mayor said, yes, a BOLO went out within an hour of the incident. And I began to think about that, and I'm thinking, well, the incident occurred at somewhere around 2:45 in the morning. It wasn't even reported by the police officer who lived in the house until, somewhere 7:30, 8 o'clock when he got home from work, because nobody had reported it. So how could a BOLO have gone out within an hour of the incident? So I figured, well, maybe what the mayor meant was within an hour of it being reported, a BOLO went out. Here's the bottom line, folks. There was never a BOLO issued. There was not a BOLO issued. Not at all. We have multiple sources to confirm to us that there was never a BOLO issued. That was misinformation that was put out there by the police chief and agreed to by the mayor yesterday. There was never a BOLO issued. A BOLO was not issued. What happened was a terminal notification was issued, which is a very, very different thing. You ever see the computers in the police cars, right? You see a police cruiser and there's a computer screen in there, a little laptop computer. What a terminal notice is a notice that is sent out to the computers, very similar to maybe an email or a text message, and it's sent to the computers in the cruiser cars. So if you were in a cruiser car on Thursday morning of last week, you would have gotten a terminal message. The terminal message simply said, We are looking for this car with this license plate. Never explaining why, or that there was an armed man involved with that with that vehicle, or that this armed man might be on the street, or, look for this guy, look for somebody who looks like. Never went out. Never went out to anybody else in the region. It just went strictly to the local police cars. As of this morning, after confirming that there was no BOLO issued, we actually had somebody do a check. Just to confirm what we're saying, we had somebody actually do a check, go back, and review all of the audio dispatches from last week on that day, Thursday morning, and there was no record of a BOLO. So I had a conversation, actually a couple of conversations with Police Chief Cordeiro this morning, and in the first conversation, he angrily defended his claim that there was a BOLO put out. When I told him what I knew, he said, after doing some further review, that he had been given bum information. That there was, in fact, no BOLO issued. That the terminal message, in fact, went out. But the chief said it's the same thing as a BOLO. But it is not the same thing as a BOLO, not even close to a BOLO. The chief's playing semantics with us, trying to make us, no, it's not a BOLO. So I said, Chief, because no BOLO went out, this guy's car was found in Fall River. I said, so you called Fall River Police and said, hey, we've got this license plate. We picked it up on the surveillance camera. So, be on the lookout for this car in Fall River because we traced the license plate back to your community. So Fall River Police did find the car. Apparently it had been abandoned. So they found the car, and the car was compounded and towed away. So I said, but because you did not issue a BOLO, this guy with a gun was in New Bedford. He drove through New Bedford, through Dartmouth, through Westport, and into Fall River without police in any of those communities, knowing that he was out there with a gun and that you were looking for him because you didn't send a BOLO. So the chief confirms for us that now that he was mistaken, that the detectives investigating decided there was no BOLO necessary. Didn't want a BOLO. For the same reasons that, the chief and the mayor have been telling us for the last couple of days, that they were concerned, that it could compromise the investigation. But I'm not going to speak for the detectives. The chief's putting that out. I'm not going to speak for the detectives. So we have seen a radical change in the story in just the last 24 hours here. That the claim by the police chief and the mayor that a BOLO went out, it never happened. It just never happened. And police officers were on the streets for hours on Thursday into Thursday night. One officer told me today that it wasn't until almost 10 o'clock at night before he got the whole story about what had happened. So this is where we sit today. I did ask the mayor's office if the mayor would like to maybe change his statement about a BOLO. Have not gotten any kind of any kind of reaction back from them yet. Did have a conversation with the mayor's press aide, Jonathan Carvalho, at which time we kind of debated this whole BOLO versus the. But I did inform him once the chief had walked back his statement on that. I did inform the mayor's office that the chief had backtracked on this and changed his story. Would the mayor like to now issue another comment? Because I want to know if the mayor of the city of New Bedford thinks that it was a wise decision now. Yesterday, the mayor was on the program. He thought the chief's handling of this was perfect. Yep, perfect. I support the chiefs by not going public, by not telling anybody. Yep, I support the chief. Good move. Beside, there was a BOLO. So all of the police officers on duty knew about this. I don't know if the mayor really knew what happened or whether he was just taking somebody's word that a BOLO was happening. By the way, for the chief to walk back what he said about a BOLO, it took me actually having to demand from him a record of it because the chief was insisting there was a BOLO. And I said, no, there was no BOLO. And I can prove there was no BOLO. Well, yes, there was. And so I said, can you present documentation of that? Can you prove to me there was a BOLO? Well, you got to submit a public information document request. And I said, Chief, you can clear this up this afternoon. Just get somebody over here with that, fax it over. Just send me the documentation to prove there was a BOLO. And then that ends the whole story right there. Well, no, I can't. I'm not going to do that. You got to put in a request for public information documents. And it was a short time after that the chief walked back his statement. All right, so here we are. We have some new developments today, changes in stories. We still don't have a suspect in custody. And so now we find out that there was no BOLO. So I'm just wondering whether you think it was responsible for the police chief not to issue a BOLO, or whoever was in charge that day. Now, granted, the chief is on vacation, but he's still running the police department. Whoever was in charge that day did not see fit to issue a BOLO. Now, do you think that was responsible? And do you think that put people's lives in jeopardy? Buck stops on the chief's desk, as I told him, and he readily agreed to that. So I don't know what we do about this. Police officers' lives are put in danger, and I think this is a sad and sorry situation. All right, let's get to your calls. 508-996-0500. We're going to start right up here, and you are first this hour in WBSM. Good afternoon.
Hey, Barry.
Hey there.
Hey, this is Hank Turgeon from the Bedford Police Union.
Hank Turgeon, the president of the New Bedford Police Union. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I kind of can't resist on this one, Barry. I just heard what you said about the chief has finally admitted to you in a private conversation that he was wrong. And I can tell you and your listeners right now, what he's going to do now is try and point the finger everywhere but at himself. Instead of accepting the blame, saying, you know what, like you just said, the buck stops at my desk, someone's head's going to roll for this. Whose fault is it? He told you on your show he's never on vacation. He laughed. I'm never on vacation, Barry. Well, if he's going to use the excuse that he was on vacation, that the contact was still made with the chief's office. So the blame has to fall somewhere at the top. So if they don't want to at least acknowledge that the union tried to work with them to rectify this problem going forward with an easy remedy of notifying our members and the request from your radio station to be more transparent with news on crime, I think there's only one person that can be blamed here, and that's the chief himself.
So, Hank, was my interpretation of the difference between a BOLO and a terminal message, was I correct in my interpretation of those two things?
Yeah, I've never heard it described as you were describing that terminal message, but, a simple analogy would be like, getting a text message on your phone, but only so many cruises in the city have that terminal. So only the cruises that had terminals that were up and a police officer actually sitting behind the terminal screen could read that message, would have received, whatever it is that they put out, that they were looking for this car.
Yeah.
But nothing got put out, and now the chief has admitted. Now the mayor has to save face and say, well, I went on that same radio show, and I was adamant that a BOLO went out and every officer knew. No, we were telling you from the beginning that the officers didn't know, and that was our biggest concern. They located this car in Fall River. Every police officer in New Bedford, Dartmouth, Westport, and Fall River were in jeopardy for not knowing. From as soon as they recognized that plate, they were able to identify the car that should have went out. Chief's office, any critical incident gets reported to the chief's office. So we'll see how this plays out. So
a BOLO, though, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, though. A BOLO would be, as I said, you go on the radio, right, so that every cruiser car gets this message, and you go on the radio with a BOLO, and you're telling people, look out for this car, this is why you're looking for this car, and the person who's operating this car may be armed and dangerous. And then it goes countywide after that, right? Is that correct?
Yes, they then can take that BOLO and go on to the Bristol County Regional Channel and announce the same BOLO. I'll admit, Barry, that there are some cases where you don't want to put it out because every person that has a smartphone now can hear what our radios are saying. They can listen to the radio broadcasts of police channels. So there are times when our communications will say, control tall units, BOLO put out on your terminal. Now, if I'm on a detail and I hear that, I go, oh, I don't have a terminal, I call communications and say, what was that BOLO? So now I know something's going on, and that's what we've recommended the department do through the detail app that we have, is a push notification saying there's something important that we can't put over the air for safety reasons. Call in immediately or check your email account because we just put something important out. The chief hasn't even acknowledged that, and now it's been several days.
But that didn't happen. It didn't happen that way.
No, it did not.
I mean, this is frustrating, and it's been a whole week now, and we're still trying to sift through simple truths here. I mean, and it just absolutely flabbergasts me that the police officers in this city, and as you point out, Dartmouth, Westport, and Fall River, were all put in danger unnecessarily. And all it would have taken would be a simple step like that. You know, BOLO, even if they didn't want to put even if like the mayor says, or the chief says, we don't, well, if we'd put it out there, it would have compromised, the investigation. Then they could have done, as you suggested, just, contact communications and find out what this BOLO is all about. But nobody bothered to do that. So as a result of that, the police officers in the city and throughout the county, because we didn't know this guy was heading to Dartmouth, Westport, Fall River. He could have gone Fairhaven, Marion, Mattapoisett, Rochester. Right? So any police officer in this perimeter was technically a danger.
He could have drove to anywhere in the city, and when the mayor tells you that they deem the situation no longer a danger, that's why they didn't put it out to the public, is insanity. I don't know how he could put that on your show, saying that there was no more threat. Chris McCarthy talked about it today. As far as we all know, guy's still out there, still a threat. We don't know why he did this, and he may just be waiting for his next opportunity to go after a cop. And he knows he pulled the trigger, so he knows police are going to come looking for him, and it could be the cop that goes to knock on his door because it's a snow ban. Hey, can you move your car? And he opens fire thinking that the cop's there to lock him up.
Right.
Happened not that long ago, right?
Well, I mean, it's like, I find it absurd that if we tell the public this, that this guy's going to say, oh, my goodness, they're on to me. I would assume that anybody who pumps 8 bullets into a police officer's home has got to assume that he better skedaddle because somebody's looking for him. Common sense, right? I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of intelligence to pump bullets into a house anyway, but if you do it, you're going to run. You're going to assume somebody's going to be looking for you.
Yeah, one would think. Common sense would tell you that.
Yeah. Chris asked me a question on the way out the door, and I don't even know if you would know the answer, but you raised this issue yesterday, too, about the shot spotter in that neighborhood. And Chris was wondering, because he heard your comments yesterday about the shot spotter not picking up the noise and nobody in the neighborhood calling this in. Is it possible this guy could have used the silencer? Is there a silencer that would have been quiet enough not to be picked up on the shot spotter or by the neighbors?
I guess that's a possibility. I don't know. I have not seen any video of this incident. I know they said there was video of the car, so I don't know if that's going to be part of this investigation. I don't know. But that's definitely a possibility. Somehow the guy muzzled the sound, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it sucks for me to say to you, Barry, that I don't know. I'm a police officer. I work that district. I work 4 to midnight in the North End. And I don't know, because now I think the chief's backed into such a corner that he doesn't want to stop putting stuff out. He wants to keep everything quiet. Instead of, in the beginning of this, just coming out and say, hey, we made a mistake. We dropped the ball, and this is how we're going to correct it. The unions made mistakes. We had a huge mistake that's made national news, or at least throughout the Massachusetts news. And we're making corrections to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's what you have to do. You make corrections and you move forward. Instead, the mayor and chief both went on your show. They wanted to argue with you and get, like, they were insulted that how dare you question them. And it comes to find out now they have to backpedal and admit that they were wrong.
Well, the chief issued an invitation to me on my program on Tuesday to go out for coffee. Maybe you can come? No, we can. Yeah, we're going to sit down over coffee and solve the city's problems.
I can guarantee you the chief won't have coffee with me now. So,
Hank Turgeon, I appreciate you calling in, the president of the New Bedford Police Union. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.